Maximize Business Value podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Mastery Partners, where our mission is to equip business owners to maximize business value so they can transition their business on their terms. Our mission was born from the lessons we've learned from over 100 business transactions, which fuels our desire to share our experiences and wisdom so you can succeed. Now here's your host, CEO of Mastery Partners, Tom Bronson.
Hi, this is Connor Kenny. Welcome to the Maximize Business Value podcast, a podcast for business owners who are passionate about building long-term, sustainable value in their businesses. Although this is my first visit to the MBV studio, I'm no stranger to the podcast. I work behind the scenes at Mastery Partners, producing this podcast each and every week. So Tom thought it would be fun to have me interview him for this episode, which is part of our series on books written by Certified Exit Planning Advisors, or CEPAs. Tom obtained his CEPA certification in 2019. Earlier this year, he was invited to participate with other CEPA authors in the Author Showcase at the Exit Planning Summit in Scottsdale, where he picked up some great books. He'll be highlighting many of them over the coming weeks in this 9-part series. So in this episode, I'd like to welcome our guest, Tom Bronson, founder and CEO of Mastery Partners. And today, we'll be going to talk about his book, Maximize Business Value, Begin with the Exit in Mind. So welcome to Maximize Business Value, Tom.
Well, thanks, Connor. I'm very excited to be here, and no kidding. I mean, I have books galore that are coming up in the coming weeks that we're going to have some interviews on. There's some really, really great books that were written by CEPAs, and as always, this is, I think, maybe the second or third time that someone's interviewed me on the podcast. And so it's always surreal to be sitting on the other side. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So could you give us a little bit about your background and why you became and how you became a certified exit planning advisor?
Sure. You know, I'm what most people call a serial entrepreneur, although I don't even know really what that means. Now, I've done 100 business transactions in my career, which means I've bought or sold 100, for 100 transactions. Most of those were buying because I did a couple of massive roll-ups. So the lessons that I've learned, kind of sent me down the path of thinking about what it means for a business owner to transition his business. And so, because I've had failed attempts, right, at challenges at buying, challenges at selling, but ultimately we sold 100%. And I think that there are so many challenges in the industry right now. When I sold my last company in 2018, I started thinking about the number of transactions that happen in the U.S. every year, and it's roughly 250,000. Now, in the last 2 years, it's been a little bit higher because people are really pushing to get out of sell businesses and avoid potential future taxation, that kind of thing. And so it's been a little bit high over the last couple of years. But for all of those attempted transactions, these are people who want to sell their business or need to sell their business. They're only about 42,500 actual transactions, which is a whopping 17% success rate. Now, when I thought about our businesses, and we've been successful 100% of the time, not the first time every time, but almost the first time every time. I started thinking about what were we doing differently? Why have we been successful 100% of the time when the average entrepreneur only has a 17% success rate? And so I got really introspective about what are the causes of that and why. And I think it really boils down to the biggest reason is that business owners don't take the time to plan their exit strategy. Only something like 26% of businesses actually have an exit strategy, meaning 74% don't. And that leads to a high failure rate because business owners haven't taken the time to do that. And so the reason I became a certified exit planning advisor, right, CEPA, is because I want to help entrepreneurs really get in the mind frame of treating their business as an asset and preparing it for that future transaction, whatever it looks like, whether it's an internal sale or an external sale or sale to family or managers or employees, whatever. we really we're passionate about helping folks do that. I'm passionate about it. So I really got my CEPA to give me some credibility as I launched a practice in exit planning and helping them, because I thought, well, writing a book and having the 100 transactions in the background wasn't really enough credibility for me. So I wanted to go a little bit over the top, and so I went ahead and got my CEPA, which I am very proud to wear, on my business card, and very happy to have that, because it's put me into some company of some really, really great advisors.
I'm sure, absolutely. And I get the impression, you were saying that you got into this business to help, people who are attempting to exit their businesses, and there's a lack of planning. I get the impression that your book serves a similar purpose, to kind of highlight that lost group of people who just aren't quite sure where to go.
That's exactly right. I mean, and that really was the inspiration, for writing the book. Is now, I will tell you, I've admitted this publicly many times, and so my original working title for this book was "The Case for Exit Planning: Why Business Owners Should Be Thinking About Their Exit Plan Even from the Very Beginning." And so I sent the draft, the electronic copy, to a bunch of my clients and friends who are business owners, and I said, "Would you read this and give me your input and thoughts? How does it flow? Does it make sense? Is it something that's inspiring?" And I heard back a lot of comments like, "Boy, I sure hear your voice in this," right? And because my writing style is distinctive. You can hear, if you know me and you know my voice, you hear my voice in the telling of the story that I tell here. But nearly 100% of the business owners that got an advance copy of the book responded with, "You have to change the name, because if you ever come near my business within 50 miles of my office with a book that says exit planning on it, then you're fired, and I'll burn your book, because I don't want anybody to see that." Because most entrepreneurs are don't realize that their employees know already that eventually they're going to sell their business, right? I mean, every business on the planet ultimately transitions. And so my inspiration was, I really wanted to write a book for business owners for all the reasons that they should be thinking about transitioning their business, and how to start doing that. It's really a practical guide, and to think about the things that happen after, because that, by the way, is a big challenge as well. After businesses sell, 60% of owners are unsatisfied with the outcome a year later. 60%, that's ridiculous. It's also because they get caught up in the day-to-day. They're running their business. It becomes a part of their life. And then they sell it, and they get a whopping amount of money, and it's great. But now what do I do next? Where's my value come from? So they don't think about that either. So the inspiration for the book was that. And that last comment about business owners not knowing what to do is really one of the reasons why I needed to write this book, why I've always wanted to write this book. My dad was one of those folks. He was an entrepreneur his whole life, the reluctant entrepreneur, I'll call him, because he never really wanted to be in business for himself. A series of circumstances forced him that way. And when he sold his business, he was 55 years old and in reasonably good health. Now, he'd battled cancer for 20 years, prior to that, or 17 or 18 years prior to that. But it was never anything that was going to kill him, right? It was just, he was constantly, dealing with that every year. He'd, have more rounds of different things. But as soon as he sold his business, he lost his sense of purpose, lost his sense of will, and felt like he'd sold out his people and all that. None of that is true, right? And so it put him in an early grave. He died when he was my age. I tell that story in the last chapter of this book, as I tell business owners they need to think about what comes next, because I don't want that to happen to any entrepreneur. So this, to me, is, it's more of a story on why business owners should be thinking about their exit strategy, how to start thinking about it, some questions they need to start posing, and what comes next. And I figured that the best way to to do that was to write a book that could reach a broader audience than the one-on-one conversations that I have every day with entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I did notice when I was reading the book, you've broken it into 3 parts or acts, as you call them. What was the premise of each of those sections that you kind of cut it up into?
So that first section, which is called the case for exit. By the way, I did slip a little exit into the title, maximize business value. Begin with the tiny little exit in mind, right?
Yes.
And but what I lay out is in that first section, I call it the case for exit planning, which was the original title of the book. And it's several chapters on building one after the next on reasons why business owners should think about it. So then the second section is really ways to get started, because I feel like that one of the reasons business owners don't think about their exit strategy is besides the fact that they think they're invincible and they're going to live forever and they'll, eventually die, but will die behind their desk. That's a very common trait among entrepreneurs, right? But I think one of the reasons why they don't plan is because they don't really know what questions to ask, right? Where do I start? And so the second section of the book is ways to get started. How do I get started in this whole process? And things you should think about and people you should surround yourself with and that sort of thing. And then the third is what comes next, right? And that's that whole story that I just told about my dad and it's a tragic ending, but it doesn't have to be that way for other folks. That was a long time ago. My dad died 23 years ago, right? And so, but there's it's sort of a primer on Denise Logan's book, which we interviewed her on the podcast some time ago, which is The Seller's Journey. It's a great book about the psychological side of selling a business and what comes next and how you should think about that. By the way, I now gift that book, Denise Logan's book. Of course, my clients always get a copy of my book, but I gift Denise Logan's book to everyone that is starting a sale process on their business, because they need to understand that psychological side and really plan for what comes next. And so that's why I really kind of broke it into that 3 sections: why we should do this, things to get started, right? Ways to get started, and then what comes next after that transaction. That was why I sort of broke it up that way.
Right. And it makes for a great read. The other thing that I really noticed when I was reading through it is it's a pretty quick read. It's only about 2 or 3 hours cover to cover. Was that something that you did on purpose? That was by design?
Yes, in fact, it was, because many entrepreneurs are like me. They have the attention span of a gnat on Red Bull, right? We don't have a long attention span. We don't like to read really super long books. Now there are exceptions to that, right? I know people who are like me who just devour books. And if I turn here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 floor to ceiling bookshelves in my office that are filled with books that I've read, because I am a voracious reader. But I really felt like in order to reach the audience that I'm trying to reach, I want to give them a book that's short enough, 125 pages or whatever it is, that they could read it on a flight, halfway across the country. And I've had so many folks tell me that they've actually grabbed my book, jumped on a plane, and read the entire book on one plane ride. And I love that, because that's the way I was thinking when I wrote it, because I wrote it again. It's in my voice, but it appeals. It's the kind of thing that appeals to me. I would like a book that gets to the meat of the act just like that. Now, it doesn't mean that don't read longer books. I have tons of longer books, right? I just felt like that this was going to appeal to the business owner who is thinking about that. And so I did it that way on purpose. Now, I will tell you a little side story. It was actually a funny picture. I think it's somewhere on my website from years ago. Right after this book came out, I was at a conference in the Bahamas. And when I went to the airport to leave that con, several people actually knew about my book. They bought the book or they had picked up a copy while they were there. As I'm walking through the airport, I spotted like 3 or 4 business owners sitting there waiting for their planes, actually reading my book. and I thought that's the funniest thing ever. And so it's a surreal moment, right? As you walk through the airport and there are people actually holding your book. And so I would come up and I would ask them, "Do you mind if I take a photograph?" And it was for the people that knew me, then the answer was, of course. The people who didn't know me who had picked up a copy of the book, they were like, "Why do you want to take my photograph?" I said, "Because that's me." So that was kind of fun. Anyway, but yeah, it was by design. I wanted to have something short enough that a business owner could read it, digest it, and start thinking about it right away.
Oh yeah, what a great moment to walk through and see everybody holding that book. And I mean, not even just for wow, that's me, but wow, they're listening.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. But so when would you say is the best time? When should a business owner start planning for an exit?
Honestly, and this sounds ridiculous, but it's before they actually open their doors, right, to start a business. I've done 100 transactions, and the reason I've done 100 transactions is because I never got into a business that I didn't clearly understand my exit strategy going out. It's kind of like riding an airplane, right? When they come on and we all tune out the announcement, but we need to have an exit strategy in case something goes wrong here, right? So that's in case something goes wrong. What if things go incredibly right and you haven't really got a plan or a strategy for it, like most business owners, 74%. And so at the end of the day, I've never owned a business without understanding that strategy in advance. And every entrepreneur, whether they are the first year in a long journey or whether they've been 25 years in their business, start today. Start now. If you didn't start before you open the business, then start now because there's no time like the present. And I will say that really understanding my exit strategy from the very beginning, every time I bought a business or opened a business, sort of drove my strategic thinking, right? Because I was doing things in my business to build long-term value in the business because I understood how the businesses in that sector trade and what are going to be the drivers. That doesn't mean it doesn't change, because by the way, a couple of my businesses I held for a really long time, 2 of them for 17 years. So in 2 different sectors. And so I just give you an example. On the last one I sold in 2018, we had an original exit strategy, which was we knew that the companies in that industry were trading on a multiple of EBITDA. So we were focused on growth and EBITDA. But over time, 7 or 8 years later, that strategy shifted because in the industry, companies started being sold and acquired on a multiple of recurring revenue. So we poured all of our resources into recurring revenue and buying companies and trading that way. And then kind of after the Great Recession, it flipped back to earnings. So I had to change and pivot our strategy, but it was only because I understood how businesses were trading in the industry. And each time I could easily make that shift only because I already had the exit strategy in mind, right? So it doesn't mean that it can't pivot, because mine had to pivot twice before we actually sold that business. But understanding it really drives strategy.
Right. All right, we're talking with Tom Bronson. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back in 30 seconds.
Every business will eventually transition, some internally to employees and managers, and some externally to third-party buyers. Mastery Partners equips business owners to maximize business value so they can transition their businesses on their terms using our 4-step process. We start with a snapshot of where your business is today. Then we help you understand where you want to be and design a custom strategy to get you there. Next, we help you execute that strategy with the assistance of our amazing resource network. And ultimately, you'll be able to transition your business on your terms. What are you waiting for? More time? More revenue? If you want to maximize your business value, it takes time. Now is that time. Get started today by checking us out at www.masterypartners.com or email us at info@masterypartners.com to learn more.
And we're back with Tom Bronson, a certified exit planning advisor and author of Maximize Business Value Begins with the Exit in Mind. So what are the most common mistakes that you see business owners make when it's time to actually go to market and sell their business?
Well, of course, the first thing that I would say is really not having a strategy, because a lot of folks, want to just, I'm ready. They wake up one day, I'm ready to sell the business. We don't know what triggers that, right? I got a call recently from a client of ours now who his sister had passed away, and it started him getting really nostalgic about, you know what, I don't want to die behind my desk. And so certainly, but he also had a little bit of runway. But there are those owners that call me. I had a business owner call me last week and said, I'm thinking about selling my business. I said, well, when do you want to do that? And he said, before the end of the year. And I said, it's too late. We should have started a year ago. And so I think that a very common mistake is not starting early enough. And coupled with that is making the assumption that the business is ready to transact. Now, I'll talk a little bit about our process in a few minutes, but that's a huge mistake. If you need outside eyes to look at it and see how ready it is. What's the readiness? What's the attractiveness of the business? I think another huge mistake is not really understanding best accounting practices. And I'm talking about like managing, you always manage a business on an accrual method of accounting, but you pay your taxes typically on a cash method, right? That's the way most small businesses are. But you really can't manage a business on a cash basis. You've got to manage it on an accrual basis. And so this is true in what I call micro businesses under 5 million in revenue. They don't really have great accounting practices in place in order to present a realistic and accurate picture to a potential future buyer. And so I think that that's a huge mistake by not really getting the right advice and putting all that in order. And I'd say maybe the number one thing that is a giant mistake is most business owners don't really understand the valuation of their business. They don't really understand how businesses in their sector are being valued. They don't really understand the things that are drivers for long-term value in their business. And so therefore they're left with imposing some value that has really no basis other than it's sort of an emotional attachment to it. Well, my business is worth $5 million. Well, okay, where did that number come from? Or it's worth 20 million. Where did that number come from? If that number came from someone who gave you a real understanding about the business and how businesses trade, then it's probably accurate. But I'll tell you, in our first step of our process, we talk with business owners about valuation, and we actually do a valuation in that. And maybe out of the hundreds of clients that we've done transition readiness assessments for, maybe 3 or 4 of them had a realistic understanding of what their business was worth. And so that just tells me that business owners don't think about that. And that is a great deal killer. And so I think that that's a giant mistake as well. And that one I think is probably number one.
Absolutely. Understanding value for sure. So could you tell us a little bit about your practice and how you help clients and drive them towards their ideal exit?
Well, it's having great guys like you on my team, producing podcasts and blog posts and all that. That's how I do that now. So we have a 4-step process. I alluded to that kind of in the last question. And it is the 4 steps are a transition readiness assessment, a roadmap for value acceleration, the relentless execution of that roadmap, and then decision time. So let me walk you through each one of those things. when we engage with a client, of course, before we engage, I have multiple conversations with business owners before we engage. I really want to understand a little bit about their business. I want to understand what's their driver, what's their motivation. What are they thinking about? Why are they wanting to talk with me? And so we typically have 2 or 3 conversations, which leads to the transition readiness assessment. Now, this is not a 15-minute checklist, right? It takes all day to go through our assessment. And it's us asking questions. I say it's all day, but it's typically 6 hours or so. And we can break it up over a couple of days to make it a little bit more palatable. But we're asking questions on everything from corporate governance to finance to operations, human resources, sales and marketing. We want to understand your product and how do you go to market, and we want to understand, your mind frame and how ready the business is for transition. We ask almost 500 questions in this. We're not asking people to produce a bunch of stuff. We're just asking, how can you produce these things, right? It's things that buyers might look for. What it really is almost all of the questions that we've been asking transactions from buyers. Can you give us this, or can you produce that? We've combined it into this master list of, potential gotchas. And so when we go through that, we get what we call a readiness score for every department and for the business overall. And so it's beautiful. At the end of it, we give a 30 to 40-page report that tells every question we ask, how it was answered, how it was scored, and it gives you clues as to what the things are that can move the needle in the business. The second deliverable on this transition readiness assessment is a what we call an opinion of enterprise value. It is not a certified valuation that you could use in court in a dispute, but what it is a market valuation. We understand how the businesses in a sector trade, and so we give an opinion about what the business is worth. Now, based on all the information we learned from the assessment, we really can peg a number that we think. But we also tell how it's trading and what range, and so why you would expect it to be up or down, based on the things that we learned in the assessment. All that is wildly affordable. The most common comment that I hear from business owners, once we get to the scope of work and we give them a proposal to do that, they go, "Wow, this is a no-brainer. This is, it really is something though that we're passionate about. We want every business owner to do." The second step for businesses that are serious about preparing their business for exit is called that roadmap for value acceleration. We take all the data that we have from the first step, from the assessment and the valuation, and then we really get into a second conversation with the business owner about, okay, let's define the expectations. What does the future look like? Let's go into sort of our dreaming room for a few minutes and think about, what does the ideal exit look like? Because if we can get as clear a picture on when they want to exit, how they want to exit, at what value they want to exit, what their involvement is post-exit, if we can get a clear picture on that, and we already know where they are, then what we do is we build them a map to get from here to that end step and arriving in the time frame that they want to do that. And that is typically a working document. We call that one a living, breathing document because that one ebbs and flows. And it's easy, bite size. What we do is we chunk it in quarterly bites. We call them quarterly rocks. What are the things that we're going to do? Just following along with the EOS, or Entrepreneurial Operating System, from Gino Wickman. We try to give them in quarterly chunks of, these are the things we need to accomplish in order to get to that date, right? And so that's step 2. Step 3 is the relentless execution of that. Now, for business owners that have the bandwidth and the time and the resources, they can go take that. They paid for the assessment and the roadmap. They can go take it and execute it on their own if they want to. If they do that, we check in with them on a regular basis to make sure that they're making progress. But most of our clients, 85-90% of our clients opt to come with us, and then we work with them on a monthly basis. We have, typically a several hour meeting where we're walking through what have we accomplished, where are we, what needs to be done next. We have all the resources, and then we provide the tools and the things that are needed, and we hold the business owner accountable to getting it done. As we typically say, you can do it on your own, but you probably won't. And so you need somebody to hold you accountable to getting those things done and doing that. That's that step 3. And then step 4 is the easy part. It's decision time, which once we've reached decision time, we've accomplished the goal of getting the business ready to sell and at the value that it needs to be. And are you having so much fun that you want to stay? Or are you ready to sell and move on to the act 3 of your life? And so we have lots of clients that get all the way there who say, you know what, I'm having so much fun, I really don't want to. We need to keep working and improving the value of the business. Totally fine. We're not tied to that future exit. Although for our clients that need help, we do M&A advisory on the back end, but that's a story for another day. But that's our 4-step process, and that's what we set up to help business owners down the path of preparing their business for exit.
Absolutely, I love that. You said bite size. I love that. Give small steps so it doesn't feel as overwhelming. But yeah. So one last question for you. This podcast is all about maximizing business value. So what's the one most important thing that you recommend business owners do to build value in their business right now?
Honestly, I think that I've probably been asked this question since I've been interviewed on this podcast many times, and I bet I've given a different answer every time, but I didn't take the time to go back and look. But weighing on my mind right now is really understanding how businesses in your sector are valued and really understanding the value of your business. We've got a tool on our website. You can go and for free fill out a very short questionnaire, like 25 or 35 questions that will give what we call an estimate of enterprise value. And that's totally free on our website at masterypartners.com. Or genuinely, you can also at our website go and buy a TRA, the Transition Readiness Assessment, and that's the real way to understand the estimate of enterprise value is just not as in depth, but it'll give you at least the range that businesses will trade at. And in the opinion of enterprise value, which comes in the Transition Readiness Assessment, that really gives you a detailed look at what the value of the business is. So to me, the first thing business owners need to do, most important thing they need to understand is the value of their business. And don't be thinking emotionally, think logically, and get some help. Have someone look at that.
Absolutely. Love that, thinking logically. And I have a bit of a bonus question here for you. So since we're talking about books today, are you planning to write any more? Do you have any more coming out anytime soon? Anything in the works?
I do have. My second book is coming out at the end of this series. We're hoping that we timed it right. And it builds on the theme here, which, we talk about, the reason to do it, some first steps, and then, thinking about the next phase. In the next book, it is 65 specific things any business owner can do to improve the value of their business. It's written a lot like this, very short stories about why you need to do this. And then in every chapter, there is a link to our website, free tools, or other things that they can find, and challenges to go and do those specific things. But it is 65 specific things, and it is coming out hopefully in just a few short weeks here. A few short weeks, probably 9 or 10 weeks away. And so, yes, that one is the next one. But I also have some more. I really want to stick with that and build on the maximize business value theme. And so beyond that, I'm already thinking about books 3, 4, and 5. Book 3 is probably going to be leadership lessons for entrepreneurs, and how to shift from being a business owner into being a true entrepreneur. I love that theme. It's something that Michael Gerber started me thinking about, right, with his books, and so it'll be on leadership and really transforming leadership. Another one is one of the ones that I really want to do is productivity on steroids. We accomplish so much at Mastery Partners, and you know this because you get caught up in the vortex, but it's because I am relentless on my execution, right? And so I really want to write a book on how is it that we keep our energy so high all the time and accomplish more than most people can. And there's very easy ways to be able to do that. And so I want to write a book. That'll be a shorter book on that, but sticking kind of with the maximize business value theme. And then I've got a personal book that I've been wanting to write that I really need to sit down and think about. And that is what I call currently the working title is a love letter to my future sons-in-laws. And it is how to be a great husband and how to be a great father. It really comes from hopefully teaching them about all the mistakes that I made on my journey, and hopefully helping them avoid some of those mistakes. As Eleanor Roosevelt said, learn from others' mistakes because you can't live long enough to make them all yourself. And so that last one's kind of a personal one that is really a book that I want to publish, but what I really want is to just give it to them and have them have something that they can rely on that'll give them some good advice.
Absolutely. Beautiful, beautiful. I can't wait to get my hands on any of those. So how can our viewers and listeners get in touch with you?
So easy. Wherever you found this podcast, you can make a comment, and we'll see all of those. Or you can go to the website, masterypartners.com. My cell phone number is right on the website, 817-797-1488. And yes, although we have lots of folks at Mastery Partners, several partners that work with us, it is my phone number that we publish, and I'll direct you to the right place because I want somebody to answer the phone, right? And so we started that a long time ago. And you can also just schedule a call with me right on the website. There is a button there that sends you to my calendar. You can pick a time that's convenient for you and jump on. And so lots and lots of easy ways to interact with us at Mastery Partners. Perfect.
Well, thank you for being our guest today, Tom.
I have enjoyed this. Connor, you did a wonderful job interviewing me. Looks like we have a future podcast host on our hands.
Oh, thank you. You can find Tom Bronson at masterypartners.com or on LinkedIn or wherever you found this podcast. This is the Maximize Business Value podcast, where we give practical advice to business owners on how to build long-term sustainable value in your business. Be sure to tune in next week and follow us wherever you found this podcast. So until next time, I'm Connor Kenny, reminding you to learn as much about exit planning as you can by reading books written by CEPAs while you maximize business value.
Thank you for tuning into the Maximize Business Value podcast with Tom Bronson. This podcast is brought to you by Mastery Partners, where our mission is to equip business owners to maximize business value so they can transition on their terms. Learn more on how to build long-term sustainable business value and get free value-building tools by visiting our website, www.masterypartners.com. That's master with a Y, masterypartners.com. Check it out.
That was perfect. I wouldn't make any changes on that.